Hello and welcome to episode 153 of Prose. This week, enjoy a day of prepositions in New York City. Indulge your voyeuristic tendencies that land you a new family above the streets, and confront utter silence beneath them. While you listen, please consider heading to prospodcast.com, our one-stop shop for all things prose. There, you can find links to social media, the episodes, a shop for swag, the show's Patreon, and more. On social media, like and share away, and please say hello. Most importantly, please do consider subscribing, rating, and or reviewing wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening. Let's get to the tales, shall we? This week we have Across the Way and Underneath. Enjoy. Across the Way, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. I can always see you all, through your windows across the way. You are a courtyard away, but I feel like we are family. We share our lives, after all. I first noticed you all upon moving in, of course, but it wasn't until our first Christmas together before I truly saw you and saw this for what it is. Your tasteful white lights brought your three-quarter wall window to life in a way that was nothing short of magical. A cliche when, in the glow of the Christmas season, maybe. But what are cliches if exemplary moments that shine golden amid a pattern of chaos in our lives? I love that you do not stack your presents beneath the tree willy-nilly. You make little ziggurats of them, seemingly in piles for each recipient. But I'm guessing there. It really looked like she loved her stack. I know she put on that special jade nightie, all rippling silk and sheer, that she doesn't wear as much anymore, surprising you as you ensured everything was just so for a magical Christmas morning. How long ago was it that she last engaged you like that? I know, it's not all good times together. We have weathered some storms. When you can't or won't join me in the making of our coffee in the morning, I know that the day will be a little bit off. That there are some storm clouds in your spirit. I see that you have stopped reading that text on better investment. I know how easily you get discouraged when the world just keeps doing its best to batter us all down, but you've pushed through these challenges before. Remember when you put up the pull-up bar right there in the open door frame of the kitchen? You used it religiously for months on end, and we all noticed the change in your affect and your body. But then you took it down after just a couple weeks of disuse. It took another month or two for you to find the courage to put that bar back up again. And what happened when you did? Well, you leapt right back into your grueling in-home regimen and, once again, began to feel more like yourself. You can't let those dark voices that come throughout any given day, throughout every given night, chip away at your resolve, man. We all know you are capable of great things. That much is obvious with where and how we live. But beyond that, when you are your best self, you go beyond providing these material comforts. You provide us all with laughter and logic and love in a true sense, your whole family. That's special. Do you know one thing that makes me snicker? I think it's funny how you parade around shirtless. It is far too cold for that mess of late. And yet there you are, skin bared and flitting about your morning activities. Here I am, with 2 pair of socks, sweatpants, a t-shirt, a sweatshirt, 2 scarves, and a beanie hat. I think that we both know why I don't have a woman on my side of the canyon. Clearly, I'm not nearly as tough and rough and physically unassailable as you. Or maybe the heat just works better there. One of 1,000 curious questions that come to mind when we are spending our together yet apart time together. Why does she not do anything to help you? You cook. You clean. You take care of your nephews and nieces when they come for a week-long visit. You walk the dog. You wrap the presents. You do the shopping. Short of sitting on the couch with her back to your efforts and the occasional pity fuck so you don't lose interest or have wandering eyes, I do not understand how she keeps you around and why you keep her around. Love does strange things, I guess. Do you enjoy working from home in this new pandemic reality of ours? I certainly do. I know that we had a great time those couple weeks where I was forced to stay home after a positive COVID test. Even though I was all but on death's doorstep, we still got to work side by side and enjoy the strictures of the capitalist indentured servant with one another. You seem like you miss your office, though. I was much more social 10 years ago. I'm not sure what stripped me of my desire to go out and be with others, but you certainly don't seem like you are in danger of losing the drive fully. Why do you fully wash the dishes and then put them in the dishwasher? The elbow grease and effort you put into washing up after you cook and you all eat is impressive, and nothing at all to sneeze at. Those dishes are sparkling clean and certainly disinfected. Yet, you run them through a pots and pans cycle. That seems superfluous and maybe a bit wasteful, man. Which reminds me, why don't you just cook what you like from time to time? I know that you are trying your hardest to be fully vegetarian with an eye toward going fully plant-based, but you keep on with the meat dishes. Spaghetti and meatballs, roast beef, pan-fried steaks, pork chops. You don't eat that. Cooking it makes you rich. Do you think she would understand if you at least had a meal or two a week that was geared toward your dietary and culinary desires? She seems rather inflexible, but maybe it wouldn't hurt to ask. And the questions go on. Living together but being unable to commiserate gives birth to innumerable inquiries that are left unanswered. I wonder if you have any questions for me. Why I don't cook more, why I work all the time, how I get on completely alone, save my little dog, who these women that come in and out of my life are, and whether or not they were, are, or ever will become important. Just like me, I think that you, and to maybe a lesser extent she, might be hungry for greater detail from your roommate. Sometimes, I think it might be better that we can't get the answers to all these questions. This way, we all remain a happy family. Too much information allows us to see flaws more clearly, questionable quirks and predilections more in focus, and that often leads to discord in an otherwise, if not joyous, if not happy, well-balanced and functioning home. Just this morning, I saw, as usual, you're being rather conservative with the coffee grounds you put into the drip machine. You know that I need my coffee to be black bilge. You and she sip on a discolored stream at best. Discussing this in detail, you see, would only highlight our differences, thereby driving us apart. This is the power in our sharing our lives with a gulf in between us. Me sipping my strong coffee with a dash of oat milk, cursing my upstairs neighbor's thoughtless furniture moving, and wondering what I should do with my life. Your she, sitting on the couch, endlessly flipping through her iPad with reruns of The Bachelor playing and asking why the breakfast isn't ready yet because she's starving. She's always starving. You sipping your slightly discolored water you call coffee with some steamed milk foam, deftly scrambling eggs with your left hand, and pouring waffle batter into the machine with your right. You're almost out of orange juice, by the way. You know how she hates that. It's a good morning, and I feel blessed to have my extended family with me, puttering about and living life there, across the way. Thank you for listening to Across the Way, an original short story by me, Jared I. McGee. Next up, please stick around for our second story this week, Underneath. Underneath, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. Sitting on the Uptown D at just a little past noon, There is something resembling silence. The announcer squawks in.
My apologies, but we are being held by a red light. There are 2 trains ahead of us stopped on the tracks.
No one reacts. Heads are bowed, looking at screens or pages. The man in the corner's unwrapping of his lunch, a Cliff Bar, becomes deafening to the lunchtime crowd. A few looks of disapproval spring up, but it's impossible to tell if the scowlers are upset by the noise or if they are envying the man his bite or two of sustenance, most of them being en route to their own meals. A handful of the small momentary community look up from their screens after a few breaths, whatever Wi-Fi or signal they had been clinging to being cut off from them in the deeps of the earth. The smart ones down here have their media ready to go offline, downloaded with moments just like this in mind. I have plenty I could beam into my ears, but I just said what is likely a goodbye forever to a friend and protege. I don't feel much like music or fictional diversions or hot takes on current events in the world. To put a stranger's voice in my head seems like a betrayal to this old friend and assault for this new wound. I know that I am guilty of regularly watering down emotional moments or fully blanketing what might be a time of tumult in walls of sound. Silence allows for reflection. Silence allows for me to hear my headspace, which is anything but quiet. The man with the Cliff Bar stops crinkling after an eternity. The 2 men abutting him, both, visibly, sigh in relief, though they keep the auditory reflection in. The diner eats his bar happily, mask down while all of ours are up. More resentment flows his way, as if he could indulge in his meal with his mask covering his mouth. The announcer squawks in again.
My apologies, but we are still being held by a red light. There are 2 trains ahead of us stopped on the tracks.
No one reacts. Not in the least. Silence. I begin to listen intently to what few noises there are. Muffled breathing, a little rustling, the rasp of a page or 2. Underneath the streets of the city, there was an entirely separate world of train horns, unhoused, commuters' rats clacking on rails, and more. The ecosystem being complex as any rainforest. Beneath the world is where we sat. Here, there was nothing. Men had burrowed deeply and ensured our path was enveloped by rock and soil and steel and the bones of ages past. We existed, if but for a moment, alive but frozen in metaphorical amber. The experience is intimate. It reminds me of the quiet between lovers, the silence that hangs before they leap upon one another, ravenous or amorous or both. It reminds me of when a bad phone call comes in, when a loved one tells you that they have some news and asks if you are sitting down, and there is that series of seconds where you hold your breath, they hold their breath, and avoidance pushes silence forward. It reminds me of the first night in a new apartment after a big move. The internet and cable aren't hooked up. Sometimes the electricity isn't yet on either. Candlelit, a new resident is largely forced to sit with themselves. At a time of transition, loneliness and eagerness weigh heavily, and infinite doors closing still resound from yesterday. Silence. It was utter, abundant. A teenager had been playing her Nintendo Switch quietly, eyes darting and micro-expressions dancing out across her face as she had ventured across digital worlds while cut off from the larger one. But she had stopped under the crushing weight of all this earth and all this silence that comes with it, underneath the world. She was something out of Burton's remake of Alice in Wonderland. All lacy white tights with interlacing patterns of hearts and flowers. Her already blonde hair looking to have been bleached nearly white, which came as quite a contrast to her almost violently neon blue-eyed stare that would dart up and away from her screen from time to time. She had a Disney Tsum Tsum bag in her lap, positioned just right to help her hold up her Switch. On first glance, she was 16. On second, she was probably closer to 30. Just another soul doing their best to stop the march of time. No teenager here, after all.
Attention, passengers. We will be moving soon. There is now only one train ahead of us stopped on the tracks.
The most surprising thing to me is that no one seems to be checking the time. Unlike when a train gets stuck a little farther toward the surface, this group sits as though we are all destined for death or hell or something worse altogether. There is a palpable fear and intimidation, a very real collective yearning to be nearer the sun and wind and trees. We were not meant to burrow this deep, and our bodies know this at an absolutely primal brainstem level. The silence hints of larger things, of course. Things both living and eternal. Beasts whom we have no business sidling up to folded into the crust of the earth. Thoughts that are generally drowned out by the hustle and bustle of life, or screamed over by a never-ending onslaught of entertainment and self-injected distractions. Down here there is only you. You must listen to yourself. And to many of us this afternoon, this seems to be our greatest fear. Forget any untold bugbears or monsters coming out from the darkness. The real terror comes from having to stop long enough to look within. Underneath our world, we find ourselves in silence. The collective breathing syncopates. For just a moment. The train car feels as though all present were locked in the same prayer. A prayer told even before writing or music or maybe even language. But then...
All right, passengers, it looks like we've got the green light.
The car shudders and then makes the screeching, groaning sound of metal on metal. The thumping, clacking begins again, and we begin to trundle down the track once more. The hostage situation is over. We all will be topside soon, and we will be able to shake off the silence we just endured, and the resulting weight of what comes when you must take a peek into the deepest, darkest places of yourself, and see what really lies buried so far down underneath. Thank you for listening to Underneath, a short story by me, Jared I. McKee. And that does it this week for Prose. All sounds that you hear come from freesound.org or YouTube's free audio library. Everything is being used under CC 01.0 public domain dedication licenses. I do hope you enjoyed our 2 very New York-centric stories today, and please do consider joining us again in 2 weeks' time for our next set of tales. Until then, as always, love those around you, tell them that you do, and embrace this life as it is, stranger than fiction. Thank you so much for listening.